to give up. We ought to erase the hard, fast lines that we have drawn. Perhaps we shall be obliged to say in some cases, this I cannot give up yet. But we should not ever say to ourselves, I will never give up. So let's dispose of what happens to be a hazardous, open-ended thing that we've left. It suggests that we ought to become entirely willing to aim towards perfection. We note that some delay, however, might be pardoned, but not much. That word in the mind of a rationalizing alcoholic could certainly give a long-term meaning. He would say, how very easy. Sure, I'll head towards perfection, but I'm certainly not going to be in a hurry. Maybe I can postpone dealing with some of these problems indefinitely. Of course, this won't do. Such a bluffing of oneself will have to go the way of many other pleasant rationalizations. At the very least, we shall have to come to grips with some of our worst character defects and take action towards their removal as quickly as we can. The moment we say no, never, our minds close against the grace of God. See, as soon as you say that, something happens in the universe that you blocked God off. It's just like saying, I'm going to run the show. Oh, cosmic bellhop. You take care of my needs. So that's what happens. You block yourself out. Delay is dangerous and rebellion will be fatal. This is the exact point at which we abandon limited objectives and move towards God's will for us. Delay is dangerous and rebellion will be fatal. Just take it as that. I mean, just say it that way. That way you won't be rebellious. So, now we go to the next proposition, which these fit like gloves. I'm willing to change. I'm going to ask God to help me. That's all. It's a simple little process. I'm going to be willing to change. I'm going to ask God to help me. Simple. So it says, though, humbly ask Him to remove our shortcomings. And I find that the best way to do this thing is to go to the back of step 7 because it's summarized so well there. Page 76. Let's just go there. Look at that last paragraph. This is the essence of the step in one paragraph. The 7th step is where we make the change in our attitude. Here we're talking about attitudes again, which permit us, with humility as our guide, that is a willingness to do God's will as our guide, to move out from ourselves towards others and towards God. That is, to become of maximum service to God and to our fellow man, move from being a taker to a giver. It is really saying to us now that we ought to be willing to try humility in seeking the removal of our other shortcomings, just as we did when we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. If that degree of humility could enable us to find the grace by which such a deadly obsession, alcoholism, can be banished, then there must be hope of the same result respecting any other problem which we could possibly have. Now that's summarized, that's step 7. In a paragraph. And it's a little bit longer than just saying, I'm going to ask God to help me. We have some electricity around here, I can tell you that much. So step 7 is just a continuation of that process, willing to change, going to ask God to help me. And we summarize it right there, and you really can't say that much more about it, can you? I can't either. Why should I even ask you, Glenn? We about out of time?
15 minutes.
Oh, 15. Let's go back here to page 70. Let's find out how we got that conclusion we just read about. Since this step so specifically concerns itself with humility, we should pause here to consider what humility is. And we know what it is. We can't define it any better than that. A clear recognition of who and what we are, followed by a sincere effort to become what we can be. So, and a willingness to do God's will. That's what we're looking for. So when you're in that realm and you move out of this me, my ego-driven self into a one where you're just a player, trying to do the best you can and contributing to life. You want to contribute. You don't want to be a take-suck. You want to contribute and want to give. And the harder that you put the effort in on these two steps of being willing to change, and you have to have a relationship with it. I mean to tell you, when you start talking about this stuff, you have got to engage your mind. When you say, I'm willing, you're going to got to close your eyes and say, what does that look like for me? What does it look like? And then you have to answer that for yourself. What does it look like if I'm willing? How am I going to show up as willing? Well, it's got to be different than it's always been, right? If you got any resistance to that, guess where it's coming from? The past. The past is the thing that'll kill you. The past is what kills most alcoholics because they're not willing to give it up. They're just not willing, and they don't understand it like you and I understand it now. It is what it is. I became a Southern Baptist because I was thrown into that mix. What else could I become? They spoke English with a Southern accent. They didn't speak Chinese, so I speak English with a Southern accent. My environment produced that. I have a relationship with all that stuff in the past, and I love all of it, but it doesn't run my life anymore. I may want to talk like a New Yorker. Don't think so? That's not possible. Work hard. I think I could do that. Humility as a word and as an ideal has a very bad time in our world. Not only is the idea misunderstood, the word itself is often intensely disliked. We get it all mixed up, don't we? With humiliation. We get it mixed up with being humble, like subservient. That's not what humility is. Humility is our definition of it now, and that this should be your new definition. And this is a powerful definition. A willingness at all times, a clear recognition of who I am, and a willingness at all times to do God's will. Clear recognition and a sincere attempt to become what I can be. Not what I am. I am what I am. But my potential and my possibilities are unlimited. The only limits that you and I have about any of that stuff are the ones that you and I place on ourselves. And most of us, by the time we get to Alcoholics Anonymous, by the time we reach 12 years old, we have heard no in some form or another, I don't know how many thousands of times. You're not capable, you're not smart enough, you're not bright enough, you don't make good grades, you don't have the money. And you start saying that to yourself when you want to take on a new challenge. I want to become a nurse. And then what happens? The first thing happens is these considerations that I talked about yesterday pop in. Oh, you're not smart enough. You didn't finish high school. You didn't get your DED, and all that stuff. I didn't do good in school. I can't study. I don't have good study. You say all that stuff, and what you're doing is just defeating your purpose right off the bat. You've just talked yourself out of it. So what you need is a coach. You need somebody to stand with you and say, whisper in your ear and say, you can do any damn thing you want to. You set your mind to it. They're just obstacles there. We all got obstacles. We just have to overcome them. Then we tell him about the $10 million story in Mexico. We make sure he understands that. If it was important enough, you'll do whatever the hell it takes. And you'll live your commitment every day. Remember the third step prayer. It's in the universe. You cannot reverse it. It's there. You've made a deal. You've struck a deal, and you've got to hang in with it. And we hold you to it. If you don't have a sponsor that holds you to your word, run fast and get another one. Most of these, page 71, down towards the bottom there, and all these strivings, so many of them well-intentioned, our crippling handicap had been our lack of humility. We don't understand it, didn't understand it. Now we have a new definition for it. It should not be a hang-up any longer, right? Okay, page 72. Lack of anchorage in any permanent values. This blindness for the true purpose of our lives. And I think most of us are blind to that. When we come to Alcoholics Anonymous, we don't have any visions. Well, we have some visions, but they come out of them bottles. Know what I mean? We know what we want to do. You ever seen a drunk come in right in there? What do you want to do? So, I don't know. Just want to grow up. I want to stop drinking. We'll see. He utters that, I want to stop drinking. And then we'll see how serious he is, right? There's no test here, but we can see if he's sincere about that. Most of them are not. Very few of us get sober and stay sober. Very few. Percentage-wise, on the percentage basis, probably about only 3 or 4 tables of us will make it. Out of all this room. But see, the odds change when you come to a big book seminar. Oh yeah, they do. They change. Great. Oh, your chances are much greater than those others because you're hearing the truth of the matter. You have no excuse after Sunday. You know what the big book says. You know how the process works, and now you just have to do it. No hang-ups. Nothing to hold you back. And then you can really see. Okay, page 73. At first we see humility as a necessity. This is the barest beginning to get completely away from our aversion to the idea of being humbled, to gain a vision of humility as an avenue of true freedom. How do you gain a vision? What do you have to do to have a vision? Close your eyes. You have to close your eyes and see yourself, whatever your vision is. Say you want to be a nurse. And you have to close your eyes and you have to see yourself in that uniform. You have to see yourself in that hospital. You have to see yourself carrying that stethoscope. You have to see what you're looking like. How's your face? You got a smile on your face? What are you wearing? What color are the walls? You have to envision that stuff, folks, and you can do it. Tomer alluded to it. The mind is so powerful that you can close your eyes and do and be anything you want to. And whatever you think about up here is produced. Whatever we think about, whatever consumes our thoughts is what we produce. Everything that we see in the universe, other than God's creations, were at first somebody's vision, somebody's thought, somebody's idea. He saw it before it happened. Somebody saw this thing, and it was probably... it was probably the final results of something that preceded it. Could have been a flashlight. Flashlight showing through a clear transparency. And they say, hey, look, it shines on the wall. And they come up with this thing. So everything that we see was a thought or a belief or an idea before it occurred. And so we have got, I think, to start thinking in terms of, to gain a vision of how we see ourselves. I know it. And when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, Wesley Parrish was he was the one I wanted to be like. I followed him around. I stuck with him. I imitated him. I did what he did. And when he said, you got to do these things and read these books and do these steps, I didn't have any question about it. I closed my eyes and I said, the only way I'm going to get to be like him is do what he did. That's the only way. I got to put in some work. I want to have a vision, not a fantasy. The difference. Okay. To improve perception. Page 74. To improve the perception of humility, perception is the thought, starts another revolutionary change in our outlook, in our attitude. Our eyes begin to open to the immense values that have come straight out of painful ego puncturing. Until now, our lives have been largely devoted to running from pain and problems and reacting. That's another thing we do. We fled from them as from a plague. We never wanted to deal with the fact of suffering. Escaping via the bottle was always our solution. Character building through suffering might be all right for saints, but it certainly didn't appeal to me. So these two propositions are the beginning of the search. You see, in AA, you're always seeking. In the realm of the Spirit, you're always a seeker. And the more you seek, the further the boundaries get. That's what keeps you right in the middle of it all. You can never get there. And as a matter of fact, there's nothing to get in AA, is there? Is there anything to get here? No, everything that you have here is created by you. You create your own life. You create your own success. You create your own sobriety. All of this stuff here is just some guidelines to give you some assistance in moving in the right direction. That's what AA is all about. And then you and I have another further responsibility. We talk a little bit tonight, is that you and I are the caretakers of what we have today. We got to protect it. Then we got to carry this message. What does the 12 steps say? Having had a spiritual kick in the butt, having a spiritual awakening, it says tried. I don't use that word. We carry this message to others. We carry this message to others. What message? The one that gave you the spiritual awakening. That's the how. Well, I came from there and I'm here now. How'd you do that? Well, it's a process. 12 steps. Attitude change. Inventory. Confession. Cleaning up the wreckage of the past. All that good stuff. How long does it take? Not very long. But it takes a whole lot less than a year. You know what I'm saying? So many people, every time you see reference to time in our program and in our process, it's always quickly. You think about it. What are your chances of getting sober? Sitting around thinking or doing? Think about it. Some people think it's a thinking thing. I'm going to meeting tonight. What are you going to do? I'm going to sit down and think. This is something you have to do. You have to do this work in order to get these results. It makes sense. I mean, it seems redundant to even speak about it, but you have to speak about it because there's some people that are just as dumb as I was when I got here. Didn't know nothing. You got to have some instructions. You got to have somebody lead the way. You got to have the bell ringers. You got to have somebody with a carrot on the stick out here saying, "Come on with me. This is fun. Live life and live life with some passion." So I'm going to recommend you do that. Live life with some passion. Listen, let me give you another thing. You walk around these hallways and you see a name tag on this body, speak to it. Acknowledge that it exists. Say hello. You don't have any conversation, but at least, how you doing? Everything okay? I see people that are still willing on Saturday afternoon to walk right past you. Don't look at you. Don't acknowledge you. Stop that. It don't hurt to be nice. It don't hurt to say hello. Then you feel welcomed. You feel part of. So stop that stuff. What else was I going to say? I don't know.
All right, 3 minutes. Just wait.
They're trying to give me the time there. Tomer's holding up his nub. We're going to have 3 and a little bit. So here's the deal. We're going to take, in a minute or so, a little break. And we have a special treat as we start the next session. So you be here. It'll be It's something that Glenn's wife does for us. She's just an amazing woman that brings so much joy to a room of people like us. So we're going to take that 15-minute break now and come back at 3:30 when you hear the music. All righty. See you later.
I knew all my hardcore people would be here. Yeah. This is well, I love y'all for sitting here and listening, because I know there's parts of your anatomy that's getting tired. Your mind's tired, and other parts of your body. Because you have a hard job. So many people say it's nice of you to take your time and do all this. It's nice of y'all to sit and listen. That's a hard job. It really is. So I appreciate you being here. I always appreciate my hardcore group, and I'll try to be gentle. Okay? Okay. Step 5 that y'all had right after lunch, our principle there is integrity. Not that we needed to get a little bit of that back and work on it for the rest of our lives. Having a basic integrity. We don't have to be, little nail out of the woodshed and be so proper, and so we're not saints, as the book tells us. But to try to get some of this basic integrity. Keep our word when we possibly can. Even if it's over a small thing. I'll give you a call. Telling somebody, I'll give you a call. And then not ever calling. And I find, and I do not blame it on my age, I find that writing it down is the only way I'm going to be able to keep that part of my integrity in place. Call such and so. And even if I get the machine 3 or 4 times, I've still called. But working on the small integrity first, because we certainly didn't have it when we were drinking, did we? So that's the principle that we put into our lives when we do step 5 and work on for the rest of our lives. Okay, step 6 was willingness. The willingness not only where the program is concerned to do the things that they tell us to do, to be willing to try these things that they're suggesting in the steps, but the willingness as we go along in our sobriety to listen to other people. And that's why I was complimenting y'all. It's a hard job to sit and listen to other people, especially if they're telling you something that you don't agree with. And they're trying to convince you that they're right. And it's hard to just stand there and keep your opinions to yourself. Because I don't like to give away too many of my opinions, because they come bouncing back and they were wrong to start with. So a lady pastor, an old gal from Alabama, told me, she said, Willie, and I don't think she's the first one that passed that on in world history, but she said, I've learned a little something, that when people are trying to convince me that they're right and I'm wrong, to just say, I don't agree with what you say, but I'll think about it. Man, that keeps a lot of friends in your circle. Keeps a lot of people that, if you stand there and keep arguing with them, you're gonna taint the relationship that you have. And what a waste, because sometimes one that you have is turning out to be very important to you. So just saying that very simple thing to them, I don't agree with what you say, but I'm going to think about it. That helps me to cool off and not take for granted that I'm supposed to straighten them out on whatever we disagree about. Okay. Step 7. Humility. And that's not the dreaded word. As you go through step 7, you see that humility just means that I can step back and know that I'm not the most important person in this world. And that the world doesn't turn according to the way it should, as far as I'm concerned, all the time. But it was here before I was. So I think it has a little seniority. So whatever the world is deciding to thrust upon all of us, one at a time, the program will be there for us if we just think to ourselves, okay, it didn't pick me out to happen to. That's humility. That's taking myself out of the center. My first beautiful sponsor in Alabama told me, said, Willie, when I get to thinking I'm too important, I stick my hand in a bucket of water and pull it out and look at the hole you made. That's a good sign, as well as ordering somebody else's dog around. So both of those, like I say, I take the program very, very seriously. I just cannot take Willie very seriously. I can't get along like that. I did it first, and it was disaster. So I found out that all the little, I think we have all the big senses, smell and touch and I see and all that. And then we have another sense, and that's a sense of humor. And God, it's good to get it back. Anybody that's heard my story tape knows that I had to get it back the hard way to survive in the very beginning. And I found out that a sense of humor was what did it. Not plotting and planning and conniving and deciding what my man was supposed to do, but to look at the situation and see how absurd it was. So if you ever get a hold of a story tape, you'll know that humility comes along with just removing the intensity of yourself and the importance in the scheme of things. Because I found out that if I dropped off the end of the world tomorrow, you know what the world's going to do? Boom, boom, boom. Same rate. It's not even going to slow down. That sort of hurts my feelings, but at least it could slow down a little bit. But humility is so, when we get it down to size, I thought it was going up on the mountaintop and putting on a hair shirt and, sitting up there cross-legged for years and years. That was humility. But it isn't all that deep, I don't think. It's just going along and putting yourself in the proper place in the respect of things. Okay, step 8, we're going to have to, I don't like to hurry, but I'm going to have to hurry. That goes against my Texas blood. Made a list. Our principle there is brotherly love. And that means towards everybody, not just towards AAs. Be nice at a meeting to AA, with everybody. People in your neighborhood, the girl at the grocery store, the man at the post office, even if he's 6 days late getting your mail put up. Just looking at people like they deserve a place in this world too. I found out that the most important thing you wear is the expression on your face. Because sometimes just the expression can help people, especially if you look at them and just say hi and smile. And in some cases that can be dangerous these days. But I'm at the age where it's not dangerous anymore. Dadgummit. So I can do that. But sometimes it's a only smile they've seen that day. And it's no big deal. You go your way, they go that way. But the expression on your face is the most important thing you put on when you get up in the morning. As my beautiful Bahia out here tells you, I have mirrors all over my house. And it's not vanity, so that I can look at myself, and see if my hair is all right. It's usually up there. But it's so that as I go from room to room, I see Willie. And if she's looking like a sour pickle, then I know that I got to straighten up before I get out and see anybody else or even make myself happy. I can sit there all by myself. I hadn't planned to be alone in the latter years of my life, but that's the way it's worked out. But I have a big window at the back where I can watch the birds and the squirrel and get the biggest kick out of them. The other day, a strange bird came up. It had an iridescent neck, and he was black as he could be. He wasn't a blackbird, because his neck was real. I don't know where he came from. But he would take the bread that I had put down for the blue jays, and he would pick it up and take it over to where I leave the water underneath the diving board. And he would take it over, and it was too hard. It had been there for quite a while, and the sun had sort of baked it. And it was too hard, so he'd take it over and dip it in the water. Then he'd eat it. Like a raccoon. He's going to wash up everything. But he'd come back and get another piece of bread. I wish you'd have been there, Bahia. It was a sight. Because we sit and watch the birds and don't even talk to each other a lot of times. We're just amused at their antics. And it's really turning outward towards your fellow man. Have some fun with them. Maybe it's the only fun they're going to have all day, because people have problems besides us. People that aren't even in this program. And I can reach out and just for a few minutes, give them something that maybe they hadn't had all day. And it's not a big thing. But the brotherly love will help you. That's what I found out. Helps me more than it helps them. And doesn't cost me a cent. Not a cent. Okay, we make a list of all the persons that we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. So this is where we turn outward. Step 8 and 9 are concerned with personal relations. First, we take a look backwards and try to discover where we have been at fault. Next, we make a vigorous attempt to repair the damage that we have done. And third, having thus cleared away the debris of the past, we consider how, with our newfound knowledge of ourselves, we may develop the best possible relations with every human being that we know. Now, see, that sort of confuses you when you first start, because my fist got balled up like this when I first read this, and I was sitting there with Rose there in Alabama, and I could feel myself clenching my fist. I don't want to. I don't know whether I can do this or not. But see, the step says all I'm supposed to do is make a list. But I'm already mad about, trying to repair relationships. And I'm not even ready to repair them. I'm making a list of all of these people that need some repair on my part. So we go on, and it says this is a very large order. It's a task which we may perform with increasing skill, but never really finish. Learning how to live in the greatest peace and partnership and brotherhood with all men and women of whatever description is a moving and fascinating adventure. And those of you who know me know that that's one of my favorite words, adventure. It's always a promise, because I'm up for anything new that's, as I said this morning, not illegal, immoral, or fattening. If I can clear it through those three things, except now I'm trying to keep my own weight. As you get older, you get that problem. Every AA has found that he can make little headway in the new adventure of living. What a promise, until he first backtracks and really makes an accurate and unsparing survey of the human wreckage that he has left in his wake. To a degree, he's already done this when taking moral inventory. But now the time has come when he ought to redouble his efforts to see how many people he has hurt and in what ways. That's what's important. That's what's important. What ways, so that I will not hold on to those ways when I'm sober and keep doing it, and keep hurting people. Because as I said the other day, as drunks we have the ability to kill people that don't even drink. We have that ability. And I have the ability to hurt people so sober that it's pitiful. I have to remember that, because that's what it says right here, as my Latin kids in my schoolrooms used to say. It says this, Miss Bingham. And I liked the way they said it, so I never did correct them. This opening of emotional wounds, and sometime old, and some perhaps forgotten, and some still painfully festering, will at first look like a purposeless and pointless piece of surgery. But if you have... it's hard up here. Okay, like I say, I don't hurry very well. But if a willing start is made, then the great advantage of doing this will so quickly reveal itself that the pain will be lessened as one obstacle after another melts away. These obstacles, however, are very real. The first, and one of the most difficult, has to do with forgiveness. The moment we ponder a twisted and broken relationship with another person, our emotions go on the defensive. That's human nature. To escape looking at the wrongs that we have done one another, we resentfully focus on the wrongs that he has done us. And this is especially true if he has, in fact, behaved badly at all. Triumphantly, we seize upon his misbehavior as the perfect excuse for minimizing or forgetting our own. And even up to that point, I would say to Rose, I can't do this. I'm not ready to do this, Rose. I'm just not ready to do it. she'd look at me with those steel blue eyes and say, Willie, which took about 15 minutes, Willie, all we're doing now is making a list. We're really not doing anything yet. Okay, at the bottom of the page, when listing, now we're getting the people we had harmed, most of us hit another solid obstacle. We got a pretty severe shock when we realized that we were preparing to make a face-to-face admission of our wretched conduct to those we had hurt. It had been embarrassing enough when in confidence we had admitted these things to God and to ourselves and to another human being. But the prospect of actually visiting or even writing the people concerned now overwhelmed us, especially when we remembered in what poor favor we stood with most of them. There are cases, too, where we have damaged others who are still happily unaware of being hurt. Why we cried, shouldn't bygones be bygones? That makes sense. If they didn't know that we were the culprit in the whole thing, why should we tell them now? We should because it's good for us. Remember, go to any length to get it. Why do we have to think of these people at all? These are some ways in which fear conspired with pride to hinder our making a list of all the people we had harmed. Just making the list. Okay, down at the bottom of the page, lots of good stuff in between. But at the bottom of the page it says, though in some cases we cannot make restitution at all, and in some cases action ought to be deferred. We should nevertheless make an accurate and really exhausting survey of our past life as it has affected other people. How are we going to find out what our faults are and what we don't want to carry over into our sobriety? Criticism and judgment and critiquing everything and always knowing we're right. Because this is some of the ways that we hurt people, by really telling them their opinion isn't worth a squat. And that, I don't have any right to do that, because how do I know whether mine's worth a squat or not? In many instances, we shall find that though the harm done others has not been great, the emotional harm that we had done ourselves has. We pick up these habits and we carry them, and we're hurting ourselves. Very deep and sometimes quite forgotten, damaging emotional conflicts persist below the level of consciousness. At the time of these occurrences, they may actually have given our emotions a violent twist, which have since discolored our relationship and altered our lives for the worse. I don't want that anymore. I don't want that anymore. I don't want to do stuff that's going to make my attitude so bad that I'm going to make myself miserable. I'll wait for other people to try to do that. Just, start to threaten them. Try if you can. But I don't want to do it to myself anymore. I don't want to have that guilt gnawing and I shouldn't have done that gnawing. I'd much rather say I'm glad I did that when I don't want to wait for somebody. While the purpose of making restitution to others is paramount, it is equally necessary that we extricate from our examination of our personal relations every bit of information about ourselves and our fundamental difficulties that we can. Since defective relations with other human beings have nearly always been the immediate cause of our woes, including our alcoholism, no field of investigation could yield more satisfying and valuable rewards than this one. Calm, thoughtful reflection upon personal relations can deepen our insight. We can go far beyond those things which were superficially wrong with us to see those faults that were basic, flaws which sometime were responsible for the whole pattern of our lives. Thoroughness, we have found, will pay, and pay handsomely. We might next ask ourselves what we mean when we say that we have harmed other people. I think this part of the 12 and 12 is so good. It said, what kind of harm do we do people, do one another anyway? To define the word harm in a practical way, we might call it the results of instincts in collision, which cause physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual damage to people. If our tempers are consistently bad, we arouse anger in others. If we lie or we cheat, we deprive others not only of their worldly goods, but of their emotional security and their peace of mind. I've often said, and many of you have heard me say, I don't know why my man didn't drive one of those airplanes straight into the ground. He would leave home and not know what was going, whether the quarters would be there when he got back, whether they'd be burned to the ground. He didn't know whether I'd be in unknown places where he'd have to find me. I had no right to rob this man of his peace of mind. That isn't the right of one human being to another. So when we talk about harms, we have to get down to this type of thinking. That I didn't have the right then, and I certainly don't have it now. I don't have the right to rob my son of his peaceful mind. He's up in the hill country, I'm down in South Texas. And we only have each other left now. My family's gone, and he has just me. He has no brothers or sisters. So we have each other. And I don't have the right. Sometime maybe I have a few aches and pains, which to me, they're just ordinary. When I don't have them, I really do celebrate. But I don't have the right to... He can't do a thing about my aches and pains. Not one thing. He can't... he's not a doctor. He's a banker. And he's not a doctor, so he can't give me any medical advice. Why should I bother him? Because it worries him. I'm down there by myself in that house, and he's way up there. So that's just a little thing now. But I had to see that I had robbed my husband of his peace of mind, so that I have to be careful about robbing anybody else's. I don't even like, I have a beautiful little gal here named Cindy, and she worries about me being there by myself all the time. And I try not to tell her if anything untoward has happened around me, so that she won't worry about it, because she worries about me enough. And I'm glad she does, but I don't want to give her any further excuse. But the idea is to get down to just how, and the big book lays it out for us, to get down, to where were we responsible for some of these bad relationships. Sometimes we can't even remember that we got it started in the first place. That we gave a short answer, or we wouldn't listen to somebody and hurt their feelings. I don't have a right to do that. People sometimes say, well, if they get hurt feelings, that's their problem. No, I can't think that way, because I don't believe the program tells me to. It's their problem, all right, but I don't have to treat it that lightly. I have to remember that, Willie, you shouldn't have said that to start with. And then it wouldn't be any debate about whether their feelings are hurt or whether they should have him hurt or not have him hurt. There won't be any more naggy little stuff. I got enough stuff up here. But we really issue down at the bottom of the page. I told y'all to put your finger down there. We really issue them an invitation to become contemptuous and vengeful when we do rob them. If our sex conduct is selfish, we may excite jealousy and misery and a strong desire to retaliate in kind. Yeah. Such gross misbehavior is not by any means a full catalog of the harm that we do. Let's think of some of the subtler, there's our word subtle again, ones which can sometimes be quite as damaging. Suppose that in our family lives we happen to be miserly, irresponsible, callous, or cold. And we know how to do that, don't we, gals? You know, don't you? You know this old silent treatment that can go on for 4 or 5 days. And you men can do it, but not nearly as good. You can't do it. Suppose that we're irritable and critical and impatient and humorless. Oh, Lord. Living with someone that doesn't have a smidgen of sense of humor would drive me bananas. Suppose we lavish attention upon one member of the family and neglect the others. What happens when we try to dominate the whole family, either by a rule of iron or by a constant outpouring of minute directions for just how their lives should be lived from hour to hour? What happens when we wallow in depression? And that's what we do in depression. I'm not talking about clinical depression. I'm talking about this word that's being bandied around so much. I'm depressed. When one of my girls call me and tell me I'm depressed, Lord, it makes me depressed too, just hearing it. When we wallow in depression, that's what they're talking about. Self-pity oozing from every pore, and inflict that upon those about us. Such a roster of harms done others, the kind that make daily living with us as practicing alcoholics difficult and often unbearable. They can be just as difficult and unbearing sober. Could we could be extended almost indefinitely. I'm doing the best I can. When we talk when we take such personal traits as these into the shop, I'm talking like, I've been around Billy too much this week, and I'm talking like a New Yorker. Here we go. And the society of our fellows, they can do damage almost as extensive as that which we calls at home. Okay. I have a whole nother step to cover, but that's all right. I can't get it all in. That step 8 ends on page 82. Why am I letting these men order me around? That last paragraph in that on that page says, whenever our pencil falters, we can fortify and cheer ourselves by remembering what AA experience, not statistics or anybody keep it, but the experience in this step has meant to others. It is the beginning of the end of our isolation from our fellows and from God. Every person we're nice to, we're saying, God, this is your child too. Just make the list, as it says in that. And try to put in every little nuance that you can about yourself that you think you don't want to be like that anymore. It's caused you trouble all of your life. Even before you're drinking, maybe it was a bad habit. Because as human beings, we pick up bad habits. Okay, but talking about hurting people, this little story that came from the grapevine a long time ago, I want to pass on as another angle, not a different angle, but just there was a little boy with a bad temper, and his father gave him a bag of nails and told him that every time he lost his temper to hammer a nail in that back fence. The first day the boy had driven 6 nails into the fence. Then it had gradually dwindled down. He discovered it was easier to hold his temper than to go out and drive those nails into the fence. And finally the day came when the boy didn't lose his temper at all. He told his father about it, and the father suggested that the boy now pull out 1 nail for each day that he had been able to hold his temper. The days passed, and the young boy was finally able to tell his father that all the nails were gone. The father took his son by the hand and led him to the fence. And he said, "You've done well, my son, but let's look at the holes in the fence. This fence will never be the same. When you say things in anger, they leave a scar just like this one. You can put a knife into a man and draw it out. It won't matter how many times you say you're sorry. The wound is still there. A verbal wound is as bad as a physical one." And I have to remember that this applies many times to friends. Friends are very rare jewels. Indeed, they make you smile and encourage you to succeed. They lend an ear. They share a word of praise, and they always want to open their hearts to us. So we need to show our friends how important they are. and to tenderly care for them. All right, we'll get into step 9. Made direct demands, but our men have gone through the big book directions, and these are no different. It's just the emphasis that we put on. A principle here is judgment. None of us had lost that when we were drinking, did we? Oh, yeah, let's fly to Miami and then we'll fly down to Mexico. That's a good idea. Let's go. We don't have but $20 in our pocket, but let's go. Yeah, our judgment needs a little bit of repair. And we can start here and then be careful about our judgment. Take our time. So we don't jump into any situation, small or large. Because we invariably, the first thing in our brain is, let's do it. If it sounds good, do it. But when we get through with whatever we've done it, we have a price to pay. I want my judgment to be good for me and for everybody around me. Not only take, what I want to do, but take into consideration how it will affect those that are around me. Made direct demands to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. First line, good judgment, a careful sense of timing, and courage. Prudence, careful. These are the qualities that we shall need when we take step 9. After we have made the list of people we had harmed, reflected over it carefully upon each instance, and have tried to possess ourselves of the right attitude in which to proceed, we will see that the making of direct amends divide those we should approach into several classes. And Joe and Charlie have gone through those. And we put these people there so that we can use the judgment of the best time for ourselves and for them, but mainly for them, to be sure we know what we're doing when we do, because we can go back and harm people that are blissfully unaware that they've been harmed. And it will cause them pain that we necessarily don't have to inflict on them. There will be those who ought to be dealt with just as soon as we become reasonably confident that we can maintain our sobriety. There's a little clause there, until we can be pretty sure that we can go a little bit further. There will be those to whom we can make only partial restitution, lest complete disclosure do them or others more harm than good. There will be other cases where action ought to be deferred, and still others in which, by the very nature of the situation, we shall never be able to make direct contact at all. And all of those make sense when you get to thinking about it. It's good that our founders really took into consideration human nature. We just want to jump in and make it right with everybody. Just let's get this over with. And sometimes it turns out to be that simple. But if we go ahead and sort of make this division of, now who ought we to tend to first? With me, it was my man, because we were thousands and thousands of miles away from people. We were living in a drinking world. So, because Air Force people, service people, you men drink a little bit when you're in the service. And we did. So it wasn't so out of the ordinary to embarrass yourself or do something dumb when you're over at the club or at somebody's house or something. And it was easy to say, everybody was doing it. Everybody was living that same crazy life. This isn't an excuse. I found out that I needed, for my sake, to divide these people, and careful with the judgment and the careful sense of timing and a lot of courage. Go ahead and do it so I could find out about Willie. The main thing about the amends step is that I have to learn from the amends that I have to make or that I make to people how not to make any more list and not to have to think about making any. This is a sure cure for having to go back and keep making amends. I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. It was hard enough to do it here. And I take the warning that they have. You know, if we keep on doing what we have been doing, then we'll always result in what we always have gotten out of it. And that's not good enough. As I told y'all in the very beginning, I'm not willing to settle for half. I want that glass full. I did carry that over from my drinking. I want it full to start with, then I want it empty. But I want that glass full as much as I can have it. And just sometime the simple thing that I learned about myself was to taste my words before I spit them out. Just sort of roll them around in my mouth a little bit before I... That helps me not to pile up any more amends that have to be made and any more or less that I have to accumulate. None of us are going to be scot-free because we're ordinary human beings. But at least I've learned to sort of roll them around first and see how they taste to me. And if they don't taste very good, if they don't feel very good, I know my dad used to always say, honey, don't ever pass up a chance to shut up. He wasn't a psychiatrist, never did finish the 10th grade, but, he had a lot of wisdom. Just don't ever take that chance, miss it, to just shut up. Am I through? 5 whole minutes. Okay. This is sort of a purifying step. It gets rid of a lot of the, we talked about directly going to talk to people, but when we get through with this step, and we're never really completely through because there were so many things that I remembered after I did my original, I just got out my paper and added other people to it. Many instances where I had not put their names down because they were serving in North Africa. They were overseas. I'd never see them again. We were in different units by then and never see them. So it never even, I took advantage of the fact that I never see them. Tells me not to do that, and I knew better. But the thing of it is, I found out that the little that I did get done in the beginning, and I hadn't hurt a lot of people, because like I say, I was away from most of the people that really loved me, my family, friends that I grew up with, that I'd gone to school with. I didn't do any drinking back there. But I hurt them by just simply dropping them. They never heard from me. They'd see my mom and dad and they'd say, well, where is Willie now? They had no, and I could have dropped them postcards. We'd been friends all of our lives. And we lived in that little bitty community, so we were close. We all went to the same church. We all went to the same school. And like I say, when you graduate in a class of 7 people, you get pretty close all the way through school. So I didn't even, I could have sat down and said, we're stationed in Omaha now. We're stationed in Rantoul, Illinois. We've stationed in Seattle, Washington. Wherever we happen to be. I could have dropped those that I was the closest to. But to be ignored, you hurt people. And they wondered why I never got in touch with them. Didn't even bother to send them a Christmas card. I was busy. I was busy being an Air Force wife, busy and important. They were back home farming. And see, that wasn't my conscious attitude. But why else didn't I take the time? Nourishing a friendship, the time we take is so good. Because it comes back. Okay, on these 2 steps, it's a matter of attitude. That's what we're working on, is an attitude that we can carry and make us content, at least content. Happy I don't strive for. Happy is a word. But contentment. Just having that bedrock contentment even when we have a Texas tornado. I jumped in that bathroom tub in '83, and many of you remember because I came on to our first seminar that we had here, but the tornado had just torn my house all to pieces. But at least, see, I jumped in that bathtub with my little dog, and we rode out that, and the rest of the house was, looked like a bomb had hit it, but it didn't bother that bathtub. And I wasn't really afraid. Talked to the little dog. She sort of talked back to me because she didn't know what we were doing in the bathtub. But I realized after it was all over with, I was scared. But I was also just waiting for it to get over with so I could get out and see the damage. And then I couldn't get out because there were electrical wires all over. And nobody could get to me. That was fun. But the thing of it is, that basic contentment that everything was going to be all right. It's going to be over in a little while. And that's when I realized my attitude towards life. See, that tornado didn't take an exit from Florida and come down and hit us on purpose. It didn't do it. It was just there, and we have them all the time. That's the only one that I've gotten a direct hit out of. But it changed my attitude about, why did this happen to me? We're so quick to say, why did this happen to me? And when something good happens, we very seldom think, God, why did this happen to me? Why was I the one that was singled out? But we're very quick on the opposite side. Why did you let this happen to me? It's changing attitude. This I'll leave you with, and I will leave. And I will. When you change your thinking, you change your beliefs. When you change your beliefs, you change your expectations. When you change your expectations, you change your attitude. When you change your attitude, you change your behavior. When you change your behavior, you change your performance. And when you change your performance, you change your life. I'll see y'all in the morning early. Did I do it?
So now I'm an extra. Oh, I'm telling you. I love you. Well, this is kind of an emotional moment for me. It's the last time I'll be with you. And, oh, shut up. Let me enjoy this. God. I got a milk. Yeah. But tonight's special because we get a chance to continue what we started Thursday. Remember, Thursday afternoon, and I know half of you weren't here. How many of you were here Thursday afternoon? Okay, I'm wrong. All right. Once again. But we talked Thursday about the history and the evolution of alcoholism in the country, and then we talked about the writing of the book that we've been studying this weekend. And the purpose was to get a sense of where we were in the process and how fortunate we are in the 21st century to be able to get sober and not have to die, and to have a place that you and I can come to and get help with a problem that has plagued this country and other countries ever since man's learned to squeeze grapes and make a beverage. And because of that, 10% of the drinking population has always had problems with alcohol. And the outcome before Alcoholics Anonymous was not too good. It was usually death, a penal institution, or living a life worse than death sometimes. So, in 1941, I talked to you about Jack Alexander writing an article in the Saturday Evening Post. And prior to that time, we had 2,000 members of Alcoholics Anonymous. Pretty good for a short period of time. But remember when I talked to you about the Washingtonians, how they had about 500,000 in about 3 or 4 years? And yet, in 1941, we had 2,000. The book had been published in 1939, 2 years before that, but we had been in existence since 1935, June the 10th. As a matter of fact, this month, last week, we celebrated 70 years as a society, sobering up people. Nobody else has lasted that long. Do you remember that chart I showed you? Did anybody last 70 years? I don't think so. AA has and will. And the reason that it will is because we have this thing called a book. The big book, Alcoholics Anonymous. It's in the domain of our society today. It's everywhere. And because of that, now the fellowship can go to hell and back. And sometime in the future it may. But sobriety will always be available because of this book. How precious it is. So in 1941, he writes this article, and in that article, the Saturday Evening Post article, people got so excited about the possibility of sobriety that we went from 2,000 to 8,000 by the end of 1941. 8,000. Now that don't seem like much. I mean, we fill up stadiums today with 40 and 50, 60,000 people, but we went from 2 to 8,000 at a time when we were just learning to walk, or we were actually crawling as a society. We didn't know much about anything. We had Bill Wilson, who was the founder and probably the father figure of the society, that everybody looked to him for answers. And then we had we alcoholics out in the states having and forming groups based on the information we found in the big book, going to the police station, going to hospitals, whatever, to find alcoholics to talk to get sober. And small groups of people began to form. And these small groups of people didn't have the benefit of what you and I have today, just experience upon experience upon experience and traditions, et cetera, to guide them along. You just have to imagine what it would have been like and how chaotic AA was in the early 40s. With no sense of guidance except a desire to stay sober, and then you always had the big shots in the meeting that ran everything. The ones that were the bullies. You do it my way, or hey, get the hell out of here. If you come to meetings drunk more than once or twice, you can probably get a letter. I've seen a copy of a letter out of L.A. where they invited somebody never to come back. The committee has met, and you are no longer invited to this meeting. If you wish to petition, you must notify us within a very short period of time. But I mean, that's the way it was in those days. They made up their own rules as they went along. Started having a lot of troubles. Started having a lot of problems. Started having groups of people getting drunk. Because, remember, the Washingtonians came on the scene, they appeared, and then they disappeared. Within 7 years, that 400,000 or 500,000 people who got sober in that outfit, you couldn't find anything or any reference to the Washingtonians after 7 years. And Bill Wilson heard about that outfit in the 40s, and he looked into it, and he found out that they were a bunch of alcoholics. This was a society started by alcoholics for alcoholics. They had a tremendous growth thing, but then they disappeared. And you'd have to look at that and say, you could see how Bill Wilson might have thought as the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, this fledgling society of people, and it was becoming successful. What the hell can we do to prevent that? And then he, of course, asked the questions, why did they disappear? Well, in looking back, they found that they disappeared because they got themselves involved in things they had no business getting involved in. They got involved in the wet-dry issue. They even had opinions about slavery, etc. in those days. And then they were very competitive about who was the best speaker. And so they didn't last long. They didn't have anything to hold them together. And so Bill looked at that and he began to wonder about it. And in the mid-1940s, he had an idea that this society needed to create some principles that would assure our survival. And as a matter of fact, he published these 12 points for our survival in the Grapevine in 1946, I think it was. Don't hold me to this. All this information is available to you in AA Comes of Age, and pass it on. I hear somebody said that you have to have AA comes of age to come to this meeting tonight. And it's not true. I don't know who started that rumor. Somebody went out and started getting books, et cetera, et cetera. But you don't need any of that. I'm just telling you that the information is in there. And if I'm off a year or two, I'm sure I'll hear about it. And if I miss a name and put it in the wrong place, I'm sure I'll hear about that too. I hear about a lot of that stuff. Because I make mistakes, because I'm very human. And so anyway, Bill looked at all of that, and he wrote the 12 points for our survival. I think that's what it's entitled. And he put together these things, put them out in the grapevine, and they eventually became our 12 traditions. And they were accepted by our fellowship in 1950 at the first International Convention, held in Cleveland, Ohio, and which the fellowship accepted the 12 traditions in the short form as the guides for our survival, known as the 12 traditions. So we had, if we take a look, Merry Christmas, by the way. In 1939, we had this thing called the Big Book, Alcoholics Anonymous, the 12 steps. And at that time, all sorts of things began to happen. We, as groups of people, began to expand, and we began to create ways of being together. Yes.
We need to see if we got a Jose Calderon. This was just found.
Jose
Calderon.
Calderon. Jose Calderon. See here? Oh, this is not a policeman. It's okay.
Well, if you're here, I'm at the front desk. I got your wallet.
Hey, here we are. Here we are. This was an honest program. Was an honest program. Okay. Looked like a cop, though, didn't he? You're right. If he's here, he's hiding. So anyway, we started creating things. We started creating things, and this is what we had as a basic. And then we started thinking that it was a good idea at the end of the month that we should celebrate anniversaries, and so we started having cakes. And then we had, of course, in addition to that, somebody created the idea that we ought to measure our progress. And so we started creating some chips. And then we started having, thought it'd be a good idea to get together every now and then. And so we started having what they call roundups, these fun and fellowship weekends that you find all over the place. And then occasionally you would find a step meeting. And then the step meetings, for some reason or another, may become a closed meeting, and so you wouldn't know what they're doing in there. And they said, well, that's good. Well, why don't we have maybe a speaker meeting? That would be good, so we'll have a speaker meeting. And, hey, let's not forget our boys in the jails and places and hospitals, so let's have institution meetings. That's good. And then, now the pilots didn't want anybody to know they were drunks, except the two that we just saw down here in Miami. So they wanted to have anonymous meetings. Don't let anybody know we exist. As a matter of fact, they wore bags over their heads. No, they didn't. They could have. Then, of course, we began to have discussion meetings or group depression meetings, whichever. Then we have, hey, I'm different meetings. Then, of course, in 1950 we had our first international, but then we like to have conventions. Every state that I know of has a convention, so let's have conventions. And then meetings about, hey, I got a problem. Let's have a meeting about that. And then we have open meetings, and then we have speaker discussion meetings. We have, how about let's have some young people's meetings? Ippee-pa, youpee-pa, whatever that is. That's good. All right, we need to have a retreat every now and then. Let's go over to the church place and have a retreat. Oh, I know what's good. Let's have dinner meetings. Let's have some medallions. Let's have some, we have private meetings, so let's have some public meetings. Let's do some picnics. Let's have some get-togethers. And let's have any kind of meeting you want to. Now look at that. With all of that stuff, we blocked and we covered what our real purpose is here. Now, that's not to say that any of this stuff is wrong or right, good or bad. It's just a fact. We're human beings. That's what we do. Hell, it didn't take AA long to have a club. 24th Street Club in New York City. I mean, that was there almost probably within weeks. Because we're social animals. We like to get together. If we're all alcoholics, let's all us alcoholics get together. And so they had a club they could go to. And so, as a matter of fact, that wasn't one of the ornaments. But we have those things. They're clubs. They're not AA clubs, but they're clubs supported by AA people. So we've effectively camouflaged and covered up our real thing. And sometimes we need to take the ornaments off and look at really our purpose of who we really are, what we're all about. It's recovery, pure and simple. And we're all inclusive. All inclusive, never ever exclusive. It's the most democratic society on the face of this earth. Nobody's in charge. How the hell does that work? I mean, people look at us and say, how does it work? Nobody's in charge. You can't hold anybody accountable. You can't fire nobody. I mean, that can be frustrating when things don't go your way. Volunteers. So, Bill put out those traditions, and he used to go around and talk about them all the time. And then he started getting invitations to come to places, to speak, maybe at a convention or a get-together, a roundup or whatever that was. And they would say, Bill, we want you to come and be with us and speak on Saturday night, Sunday morning, whatever the case may be. And he says, we want you to talk to us about how you used to hide them bottles in that commode. But says, please don't mention them damn traditions again. They were tired of hearing about it. They didn't make any sense to people who were just concerned about sobriety. So they didn't see the need for traditions like Bill Wilson saw them. And you and I guarantee you that you and I are together tonight because we have traditions. We wouldn't be a society if we didn't have something that holds us together. Because just as you and I can lose our way, so can a group. It can lose its way. And Bill and Carl Sandburg, and I mentioned this the other day, said that if you have any society that has come and gone, has been on the scene for a period of time and disappeared, they all had one thing in common, and that is that they had forgotten from whence they came. And AA never wants to forget its primary purpose. It never wants to forget it's all about recovery from alcoholism. Nothing else. And all of these other things that I say we have in common in terms of recovery, we are separated because we need to be separated. Overeaters need to gather together to support one another in their overeating. Alcoholics need together in the support of each other in their non-drinking. Gamblers need to do what